Hey everyone, Kevin here with Divinely Designed, and I have a soap making video today. Now, I ended up doing this project over several days with multiple little episodes that I was filming, so I'm going to do a voiceover because the final result was over an hour worth of video. So I'm making a soap here, and this is a recipe that I'll have down below. I'm dividing it into four different colors. I'm using some um, titanium dioxide from Bramble Berry, some Blackest black mica from TKB Trading, and then some Mad Oil micas, Tahitian Teal, and Vodoo. And I'm just mixing these all up, and then I'm going to pour them on a baking sheet to make kind of thin layers of soap. Now, what I'm trying to do eventually is something I'm going to call Mokume Gane soap, which is a technique that I'm kind of stealing from polymer clay, where you layer thin sheets of clay together and then sort of stack them, and then take thin slices of it to produce really cool patterns. So this is really just the first step in the process here. I did use a fragrance in this soap. It was from Bramble Berry, and I think it was, oh gosh, now I can't remember. It was in the video. If you pause it there, you can see it. But it's a really lovely fragrance, ginger and something. So just made the four different colors, and then I poured them on the sheet, and then I let them sit overnight so that they firmed up. Now the next day, I divided them in half. Half of these I'm going to turn into soap dough, and then the other half I'm just leaving plain. Now, I am no expert in soap dough. If you want an expert, go over to Sorcery Soap and take a look at her site. She's sort of the master at soap dough. But basically, all I did was combine the wet soap with some cornstarch and mix it until it wasn't sticky anymore. And that it takes a lot. Like, you'll be surprised how much cornstarch it takes. Now, I also experimented with mixing in some kale and clay, and for the red, I actually tried using some Fuller's Earth, just to see what the differences would be. Now, the Fuller's Earth worked fine, but it ended up changing the color of that red quite a bit, so it went from this nice bright sort of pink to almost like a brick red. So anyway, it takes a while to make the soap dough, but I just used the four colors, turned them into the soap dough where it was pliable and could be rolled out into layers, and that's really all I'm doing here. It takes quite a lot. This took a while to do, until it gets to the point where it's not sticky. Like, it sucks up all this cornstarch and kale and clay like a sponge, really. Now, I ended up using the other colors, the non soap dough, and I'm going to do sort of the same thing. Oh, here I'm using some charcoal because the kale and clay turned the black to like a gray. So I was trying to boost up the black color a little bit, so I added some charcoal to it. It's really just for the color. Now, after they're all mixed and I have them into like soap dough balls, I'm going to attempt to roll them out into thin sheets. And I'm just going to take some plastic wrap and put the soap dough ball between it, and then use a roller to roll it out. And I make it pretty thin here, but it's not super thin, but thin enough that I feel like I can layer it. So, and I'm just doing that with all the colors, and then once I have all the colors rolled out nice and thin, I'm going to take them and sort of stack them on top of each other and roll them out together so that they kind of adhere into one mass. Now, I did the same exact thing with the non-soap dough. It was not as easy, and the just straight soap was so soft and squishy that It was really hard to do. But I did attempt it, and you can kind of see the results later on. But the soap dough worked okay. It's still kind of, sticky and a little bit difficult to work with, but it was much easier to work with than the non-soap dough. Here I'm just making layers and sort of cutting them to the same size. And now that they're all stacked together, I'm going to roll the stack out so that I'm actually kind of making each of the layers even thinner, but they're all on top of each other. And then I'm going to cut it and stack them together and repeat the process and kind of roll it and thin it out, and then cut them again and stack them on top of each other again. And the idea is that you're making these really, really thin layers sandwiched together. So I think I cut it one more time here, and then what I'm going to do is make some indentations, some impressions in it, and just sort of cut it and use a ball tool and push in, just making sort of different random shapes in it. I'm going to squish it all back together here eventually, but the idea being you're creating sort of different valleys and peaks and shapes within the layers themselves. And then I'm just going to roll it out. Now I attempted to cut it with this really thin blade called a tissue blade right now, but it was still so soft that it was just squishing. So I ended up putting that aside and then leaving it sit for a few days. That orange one was an example of polymer clay, Mokume Gane. So this is a few days later, and I'm using this really thin tissue blade to take off slices of the sort of soap I put together. I did try using a planer, but it didn't work. It just sort of made the colors run together. So I'm just going to take really thin slices. Now I repeated this with the non-soap dough, but it did not work nearly as well. And then once I have these thin slices, I'm going to put them into a mold and sort of line the mold, and then pour some raw soap on top to give me like a soap bar. So here's the next day, and that's me unmolding them, and I have a couple of still pictures. The soap dough actually came out pretty good, but the non-soap dough was really just kind of very messy and soft. So here are a couple of pictures, and they came out pretty cool. I actually really like it. I don't know that I would repeat this project. It was fun, but it was certainly messy and long and not quite as good as polymer clay. But that's it. Hope you enjoyed it.